After that, I will show the references cited in this presentation. So first of all, let me tell you that I choose the term engram from Stapp, and he defines it as a recurrent string of an interruptive word forms. So it has been given many names like multi-word sequences, lexical bundles, formalized sequences, but despite that, most authors agree that they must be tackled from a frequency-based approach. So in fact, they are just recurrent sequences of words. So they have become widely studied in the last decades because they play a crucial role in linguistic production. For example, they are a marker of proficient language use and native-like language competence. They contribute to natural language use, and they provide non-native speakers with greater fluency. And in general, they facilitate language production. In addition, they have become widely studied in different specialized languages, such as tourism, academic writing, economy, or science. Thus, my objective is to contribute to the analysis of engrams in scientific language. More specifically, I want to explore 3 to 6 grams in a corpus of research articles published in English by non-native writers. So the methodology I followed to achieve this goal was the one I'm going to tell you now. First of all, I compiled a specialized corpus, which I called UCOScienceCorp, because it was made of 600 documents, research articles written by academic scholars from the University of Córdoba. The total number was about 3 million words. After that, I extracted the 3 to 6 grams using a sketch engine. I used the ngrams function, and here I established a threshold of 20 tokens per 1 million words, which means that I extracted those ngrams which occurred 60 times or more than 60 times in my corpus. Then I had to manually verify these results because sometimes automatic software are not so 100% reliable. So I wanted to check that nothing could spoil my final results. Then I classified the results according to their structure, following Biber and others. And finally, I focused on foregrounds to classify them according to their function in the text. I checked the concordance function available in Sketch Engine, so you can see the ngrams in context and you can decide which function they are playing in context. I was based on Highland 2008, and I focused on 4 grams because 3 grams were not that clear when it came to their structure and their function, and 5 grams and 6 grams were like less common in my corpus. So for this categorization, as I told you before, I followed Highland, who was based on holiday, and basically he suggests 3 groups of functions. So research-oriented, text-oriented, and participant-oriented, depending on whether they focus on the activities and experiences of the world, on the organization of the text, or on the writer or reader. So each of them is subdivided into different subgroups. So research-oriented ngrams might be referred to location, procedure, quantification, description of the topic of the corpus, which in my case could be medicine, veterinary, genetics, and biology. They could refer to different functions related to the text, such as transition signals, resultative signals, structuring signals, and framing signals, or they could be related to the reader or writer. Thus, Highland suggests like 2 groups, stance features and engagement features, but I decided to add a 3rd group, which I called authorship related, which concerns details of the authors and the publications themselves for the reason I'm going to tell you in a minute. So let's move on to the results of my study. First of all, I extracted 1,357 3 to 6 grams, which occurs 60 times or more than 60 times in the corpus. However, as I told you, I carried out a manual verification and I discarded 239 3 to 6 grams for the following reasons: because they were proper nouns, such as Reina Sofia University Hospital, because they belonged to journals names, for example, theoretical and applied genetics, because they were Spanish structures, for example, El Riesgo de, and it happened because in some cases the abstracts in the research articles were also written in Spanish. And finally, because they were somehow unclear, such as these things you can see on the screen. So I selected 82% of the total to analyze later. And in total, my final list amounted 1,118 items, dividing the, depending on the number of items they included, I found 902 3 grams, 164 grams, 36 5 grams, and 26 grams. So as you can see, I functionally analyzed, because then I focus on 4 grams for their functions. Only 14% of the total. But we are going to start with my structural analysis, which focused on all of them from 3 to 6 grams. And I found different types of n-grams, which I divided into nominal, prepositional, verbal, adjectival, and others, such as with and without, that, it is. And as you can see on the screen, the most recurrent ones were nominal phrases, because they occupied almost half of the total, 48%. Then we have almost a quarter of the total, which were for prepositional phrases, and then we find verbal phrases. After that, the least recurrent phrases were adjectival and just others. So in terms of the elements they included, it was this categorization was similar in 3 grams and 4 grams. So we find first nominal phrases, which occupy almost half of the total, and then they are followed by prepositional phrases, verbal phrases, and the other 2 I told you were not very common. But when I focused on longer grams, like 5 grams and 6 grams, I discovered that nominal were also the most recurrent ones, but here they occupied even more than half of the total. So I found 64% in 5 grams and 65% in 6 grams, and then the second most recurrent type were verbal phrases. It wasn't prepositional phrases as in the shorter grams. And they were also closely followed by the third group, in this case, prepositional phrases. And again, adjectival and other phrases were not that common. So then I focused on, or I carried out a functional analysis. As I told you before, I only focused on 4 grams. So I said that I found 3 groups, 3 topics, depending on where the focus was on. So it was on the activities such as research-oriented 4 grams, maybe on the writer-reader, participant-oriented 4 grams, and maybe the organization of the text and the elements, so text-oriented 4 grams. As you can see now in the diagram, research-oriented 4 grams were the most common ones. They occupied more than half of the total, 52%, and they were followed by participant-oriented 4 grams with 32% of the representation. Finally, text-oriented 4 grams were not very common, and they occupied just 16% of the total. Let's focus on each of these topics. First of all, research-oriented. As you can see, there are not broad differences between the different subtopics. So we find 36% for those 4 grams describing procedure. Then we have 20% for topic, 18% for description, and we find 13% for location and quantification. In terms of the grammatical types, the most common one was nominal phrases. As you can see, they recur more frequently than others in procedure, topic, description, and quantification. However, in location, the most common ones were prepositional phrases, as they occupied more than half of the total, such as of the present study, at the time of, etc. Verbal phrases appeared in all of them except for topic, for example, and then we have some adjectival phrases in procedure and location topics. Then participant-oriented 4 grams, as I told you before, Highland found 2 different groups, stance features and engagement features, but I decided to add a 3rd group, which I call authorship related, just because it was the most common one in the corpus. So 65% of the 4 grams refer to the authors and the publications themselves, and then 35% refer to the evaluations of the different experiments, etc. In terms of the grammatical types, nominal phrases were the most recurrent ones in the group I added, authorship related, such as the authors of these or contents list available at, and then it was followed by verbal phrases. But in stance features, I mean, when they gave their evaluations of the experiments, they used to use verbal phrases such as is associated with or be due to the. And the last group was text-oriented 4 grams. So here, all of the subtopics were represented. Framing signals were the most common ones, followed by resultative signals, structuring signals, and transition signals. In terms of the grammatical types, prepositional phrases were the most common one in the most recurrent topic, framing signals, like in the treatment of or on the basis of. We also find prepositional phrases in structuring signals and transition signals, but in resultative signals, the most common ones were verbal phrases, as you can see on the screen, with more than 70% of representation. Therefore, this analysis led to the following conclusions. I analyzed, in terms of their structure, 1,118 3 to 6 grams. And as I told you before, nominal phrases were the most recurrent ones because they occupied almost half of the total. Then my analysis focused on the functions of 164 grams. I discovered a high application of research-oriented foregrounds, more than 50% of the total. So it means that most of the foregrounds used by UCO researchers were focused on the research they conducted and the different experiments. Most participant-oriented foregrounds were related to the authors and the publications themselves. So that's why it makes sense that I created a third subgroup. And surprisingly, it was a surprise for me because text-oriented foregrounds, those used to organize the text and to refer to the elements of the text, were the least common, only 16% of representation. And regarding the topic of the foregrounds, remember my corpus was scientific. It has to do with medicine, biology, veterinary, and genetics. Well, I only found 10% of the foregrounds referring to this topic specifically. So I think that the rest, 90% of the foregrounds, could be used in different genres. Some examples are an important role in, be related to the, or studies have shown that. Finally, I would like to share with you some lines I could follow in the future. So I think I could analyze the functions of the other grams I discarded in this study, 3, 5, and 6 grams, and I could do some contrastive analysis of all the different types of grams. I could also study the n-grams in the different sections of the research articles separately, for example, focusing on the methods, then on the results, and I could make a comparison among them. And finally, I think I could do this type of research in different types of discourse, such as law, environment, etc., or maybe in other languages such as Spanish. So these are the references cited in this presentation. Thank you so much for listening and for being there. If you have any question, I will be very pleased to answer. And if you want to contact me in the future, my email is on the screen. So thank you so much, everyone.
Oh my goodness, Lucia.
Sorry,
so much data here, you know. It's a lot of work you have done. My goodness. I don't know if there is any question. Anyone? Okay. Michael? Let me see if you can. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, great. Yes, thanks very much, Lucia. So much data. Your voice was so fast.
Yes, I know. Sorry.
It's good that I could see what you were talking about. The obvious question is, what about native speaker data? Is it very similar? Because some of those things, nominalizations, yes, and a lot of these things being formulaic for overall academic writing, but that's question one. Question two would be, yes, you've cited Hyland, but Ken Hyland himself has pointed out that there is no such thing as academic discourse. Each particular subject has got its own discourse. So what you have found is clearly what is general for academic discourse, but you said in further research, if you look into particular like law or medicine discourse, they would be probably quite different. So that's the second question.
Yeah, so first of all, did you finish, Michael? Sorry.
Yeah, I have. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, first of all, you mentioned native speakers. So I read some studies about that, and text-oriented foregrounds were like more common. That's why I said, okay, it was surprising here because they are used to organize the text, and no native speakers or UCO researchers seem not to use this type of foregrounds. That's why I said surprisingly. And then I think you asked whether results would be the same in different types of discourse. Was that your question?
Yeah, I think the key question was that while there is a lot of which would be academies, the things that you highlighted, you know, that we have found and our results seem to show things like that. I'm sure there is a lot of n-grams that are very, very specific for each subject. And if you have a general corpus, they are simply not frequent because obviously in social sciences, you're not going to talk about silver and gold or molecular splits, things like that. And I think this is why these turn up as frequent, because they are going to be used a lot across different subjects, but each subject will have something that is very particular to that.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised because only 10% of the total referred to the topic. I mean, referred to medicine, to genetics. So I said, okay, that's why we can use these foregrounds throughout different types of discourse, different types of writing. So yes, it was also, I mean, surprising for me. These two things I told you.
Okay, yes. I don't know if
I want your slide.
Sorry?
But yeah, we'll talk about that later. If you can send me your slides, that would be great.
Yeah, no problem.
Maybe there are more questions for Dr. Lucía Jiménez? No? Okay, then we are going to present the next. Thank you very much, Lucía, for your presentation. You work so hard always, my goodness. I don't know how you do that. Explain it to me later, okay?
I will. Thank you, Chelo.
Okay, now Alberto will be the presenter right now. Now you can share your presentation. Now it's black. Okay. Yeah, and then you have.
Can you see it properly?
Yeah, perfectly.
Great. So good afternoon, first of all. Well, my name is Alberto Vela, and I'd like to thank Chelo Vargas, but also the UNA for this fantastic opportunity for the organization of the Congress, which I think is a very good place for researchers to be at this moment. My presentation is all about crowdfunding science, but we are focusing basically on the functions of discourse markers in net science projects. But we have to understand first what crowdfunding is, what we understand by crowdfunding, because sometimes, I cannot hear my presentation. I don't know why. This is the reason I told you before that I couldn't pass the slides if I share the content. No puedo pasar. ¿Me estás escuchando, Chelo? Mierda. Okay, I'm going to share all the screen. Can I share now? Because it doesn't let me. I cannot hear you. All right. Going to share all the screen. It should be easier. I had my presentation open. It has closed now because of the technical problem. Can you hear me properly? I cannot hear you when you were talking, but can you hear me properly? Can you say yes or no? Yes?
Yes, we can, Alberto.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay, so we were saying that what is crowdfunding? This is we are studying the case of experiment.com, which is a specific platform we are going to talk about later. And crowdfunding, basically, according to P. and Gerber from 2015, says that it's a space that provides scientists with a way to share current research in an easy-to-understand format with the general public, and also allows that public to influence future research directions because they can provide funds and ideas. Okay, so we are talking about a specific genre, which is the crowdfunding genre. And in many of its features, just simply they codify the written and unwritten rules of the traditional research funding proposals, genres, which is something that Mellenbacher has studied before in 2019. Plus, but we could say it's not just that, but they do it in a multimodal environment or ambience, okay? Because you can share with other people through online discussion, through microblogging, through videos, etc. So you've got lots of extra information too. If we move on to the right side of the slides, we get the platforms of crowdfunded research today, and we can see that by far experiment.com is the most common and the most important at this very moment, according to Nature. And what we are studying crowdfunding projects, but basically because crowdfunding genre is an emerging genre which responds to new social exigencies, because there is a need to disseminate scientific knowledge beyond expert audiences, and also it helps to support the broad public's understanding of science. So if we are talking about the public's understanding of science, basically we are talking about open science, which is a participatory practice of for networking, for open discussion, and for interaction too. And it also reflects the shifts in research funding climate nowadays and some of the writing strategies that you require as a researcher today for reaching internet audiences. So if we are talking about writing strategies, we can also talk about discourse markers, which is one of those. So discourse organization mode is basically operationalized through grammatical features that reflects the different grades of complexity and the density within the texts within the genre. The expressions were called, these kind of expressions were called discourse markers by Schifrin, but there are many other levels for them. As for example, pragmatic expressions by Fraser, but there are many others. We have just used discourse markers because it's maybe the most common one. And it has been, these expressions have been of substantial interest when studying the situation language, because they help to demarcate the discourse connections, and also they help to index social relationships. We can define them, the discourse markers, as sequentially dependent elements with bracket units of talk, and they for sure help to make a structure more credible and easier to understand, also to convey meaning and to accomplish actions. So in general terms, they are facilitating coherence. And experimental evidence shows that discourse markers are used also in the recognitions of rhetorical relations nowadays. So this is one of the aims of our study, actually, to describe that rhetorical organization of the projects, but also to understand the strategies that researchers are going to use in this kind of genres to recontextualize and adapt specialized contents that they were normally traditional abstracts to the internet audiences. Therefore, we have used a methodology, which is based on two basic traditions of genre studies. One is rhetorical genre studies, and the other is English for academic purposes. So we are talking about Baserman, about Miller, about Sway's projects and work. And for establishing the rhetorical organization of the information provided by the website, we have also adapted a table that it was described first by Sway's in 1990, but later readapted by Mellenbacher in 2019 in Science Communication Online. And when we are discussing about the discourse markers, we are not just focusing on all discourse markers, but the ones who are most common in academic purposes, and basically the classification made by Cox and Hill in 2011. We have also compiled a corpus of 50 science projects from experiment.com, and we have analyzed this data with Untitled tool, which is very useful if you want to get the statistics or to compute the tokens, the types, the word frequencies, especially the concordances too. So therefore, we move on to our results. If you open the website of experiment.com, you are going to find 6 sections. They're always the same. You've got the feature experiments, lab notes also, but you can browse the project you're interested in by category, for example, F Science, which is the one we have chosen. You can browse it by institution, you can browse it by challenge grant. You can even upload your own project and to ask for funding in the ready to start your own project tab. But this is not so important for us, this general structure, but the one you can find within each project, okay? So if you open any of those projects of the science in our case, we are going to see the rhetorical organization that you have at the macro level, because you are always going to find the same sections in all the projects. You are going to have a title first and the PH name, the names of some of the backers. You are going to get the affiliation of the researchers, the number of dollars you pledge for, the pledge goal, the time of the days remaining to get it, a link to back to project, and also 5 different tabs, which are overview, methods, lab notes, and discussion. And we are basically focusing our rhetorical move and step analysis on the overview one, because it's the most similar to the traditional abstract genre from academic English or English for academic purposes, but it has been remediated somehow to adapt it to this website. So if we do a close examination on the rhetorical moves, we can find that the table 2 that was adapted from Suez by Mellenbacher, we have readapted again because you can find all the sections we have said about this project. We are first claiming for importance. If we read it here, for example, it says we propose a new paradigm. Later you claim for the benefits, like the system enables remote monitoring, and you later claim for competence when they are collaborating with the Toledo Public Schools you've got here. And then we are moving on, or we are moving to another section, which is what is the context of this research. And there you can find the typical CARS model from Swales from 1990, which is establishing a territory, establishing a niche, and occupying that niche. And this is thanks to this, what is the context research, which is the most similar to an abstract or a normal abstract we have always found. If we keep on with analysis, we've got what is the significance of this project section. You are claiming importance again. So if you are claiming importance twice, you remember you were starting the move analysis with the claiming importance, and later you claim importance again. It's because you are trying to present your proposal as something very important to back. So you have to differentiate it, and you have also from the rest, and you have also to communicate very clearly to the internet audiences why they have to back it, and that is because it is very important. Then you've got what are the goals of the project, stating your achievements. You justify your expenses in the budget items. Later, you got your outline means. This is optional, but you can provide also a project timeline for the execution of your goals. And later, this is more interesting, is you are finishing with claiming competence again, meeting the team. So you are claiming competence also twice, okay? And you are claiming importance twice and claiming competence twice. And this is very typical for from this kind of genre, especially here in experiment.com, because you are telling people this is important and we are competent to do it. We are able to do it. This is not nonsense. This is something important and we are able to develop it. So why this rhetorical organization in general? Well, because it helps the researchers from the different disciplines to center the information using always a unified rhetorical strategy to get the funds. It allows also the audience to contest the proposals under the same premises, so you don't have a mess, okay, when you are reading, and you can understand the information you receive at a glance. And it also provides a scheme that helps the audience to search for a specific information or pieces of information if you need them to compare some projects. According to the most frequent discourse markers, we have noticed that first of all, finally in the sequencing typology, and because in the explaining course were the most important ones or the most useful ones for researchers in these projects. Firstly with 19 and finally with 13. What they are trying to do, the researchers here, is to make the message very clear from the beginning, from a beginning to the end, and in a linear manner. So as the examples you've got here from the Corpus, they say, first, this project looks to explain. Second, we will continue with whatever. Then the foraminifera will be separated. And finally, this project encourages whatever, right? With the explaining course discourse markers, you get that the strategy is very much in the same line, and researchers use them trying to justify that relevance of the project. You are explaining why it is important to convince the audiences to back to a project. For example, you've got here tornado energy is important because it allows us to think about. And if you realize there is 101 frequency criterions, and that means that is one, I mean, you need to tell why and to answer yourself why is that important. Well, because that, because the other, right? If we move on to the explaining effect, discourse markers, we find so and therefore as the most popular ones with 59 and 20 of frequency, and later adding information with and also 293, maybe the most frequent one in our analysis. For the first group, for the first typology, effective, well, when they want to explain the effects of the results of something, they are using it to signal that the second unit of the discourse states the effects of results of the preceding, and also claiming for importance, because this is something very recurrent, okay? As the examples you've got here. And later, if you want to add information, you are going to use always and so, and also, and whatever, any other particle, because you are always giving extra information, giving a lot of information by accumulation to your audiences, so they can be very well informed. They can link all kinds of pieces of information you provide, okay? For example, we've got here some, we love a challenge and adventure, and we are doing the right thing, and later you can add, there normally, if you read the whole project, there are lots of ands together, and this is also a way to creating that rhythm with by accumulating information. We're going to finish with this, for example, for instance, as an example of this, or such as with 35 and 68. In contrast and alternatives, we find that but is also very frequent within those texts with 319, while with 127. But this is important. I'd like to draw attention on drawing conclusions. We don't have any kind of discourse market to draw conclusion, because these projects are still to do, okay? You are trying to get some support, some support, so you have not done anything yet. You need the data to conclude something and then to present it to society. So when you give an example, what you are trying to do with, for example, or as an instance or whatever, you are assuring that your audience is understanding the scientific concept. You are clarifying those concepts that you have stated before. To contrast an alternative, this is interesting because maybe but, as we have said, is the most common one. It helps to create a rhythm. So it brings rhythm to the text, and it does it more attractive to the audiences. Okay, it's more like a literary figure. Well, just to conclude, I'd like to say that this study has illustrated how the Web 2.0 environments allow researchers to communicate with the lay public and the internet audiences. Also within this growing political and social interest there is today in citizen science and in open science. It has also shown how its rhetorical organization and the textual coherence of the texts enable scientists to share their expert knowledge with lay audiences. And more broadly, crowdfunding science, because it's an emerging genre, but it's also an emerging example of non-traditional data source that is making already a contribution to reach the sustainable development goals in the way that they are changing the power structure. So the research, or the nucleus of the research in the world today, is not so centered or not so in the center anymore, but it's going through the periphery. It's moving through towards the periphery. These are some of the references I have used for this study. If you want, you can email me. I can send you some if you're interested of any kind of information. I'd like also to highlight that this study is a contribution to the project Untitled Chapter in Open Science, which is funded by the Spanish Ministry of Science and Innovation. Thank you very much. If you've got any question and I am able to answer it, I will be very pleased to do it. And thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Alberto, for this clarifying exposition of your research. I don't know if there are any questions from the participants here. Like in the case of Lucia. Lucia, maybe you have any question for Alberto?
I'm okay. I was just thinking about engrams in this type of discourse, you know? Yeah.
You said, for example, Alberto, you said that you wanted to describe the rhetorical organization at a macro level, and I imagine that this was done manually, okay, or not? Did you study all this with a technique, in corpus-based technique, or did you do it manually?
You mean the rhetorical organization of the website?
Yeah, at a macro level.
Well, what I have used is basically this tool that was created by, it is a move on step analysis in general. Not the first one I have analyzed. I haven't used anything because my project is not centered on that, but of the move step analysis that we have done of the information that it comes within each project. Okay. I have used the tool, an adaptation. I have done my own adaptation from the tool that Mellenbacher did, just changing some of the order because it's not the same order that she created for the kind of crowdfunding proposals she studied. So I adapted that table tool, which is based at the same time in Swales, in the CARS model, the move step analysis he did. So this is what I have done for this, to adapt, to readapt the table tool created by Mellenbacher in 2019.
Quite interesting, Alberto. Thank you very much for your presentation. And now we have Ana García Toro. Ana, we cannot see you.
A ver, está conectando.
Ana presentará en español, pero nos parecía oportuno ponerla en este panel, aunque había dos personas que presentaban antes, porque está relacionado también con lo de los marcadores discursivos. Yo además conozco de primera mano el trabajo que está haciendo Ana en la Autónoma de Madrid y bueno, ella va a hacer ahora su exposición. Ana, ahí tienes, ya eres presentadora. Creo que ya puedes compartir. ¿Ves abajo
Sí.
para compartir?
¿Lo veis?
Todavía no, ahora.
¿Sí?
Muy bien, Ana, pues puedes empezar.
Vale, pues bueno, yo soy Ana García Toro de la Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, como ha dicho Chelo, y quiero presentar una investigación que se enmarca dentro del proyecto FinTest del Laboratorio de Lingüística e Informática sobre los marcadores discursivos en la argumentación de los informes de empresas con pérdidas y ganancias. El propósito de esta investigación, a ver si me deja pasar. El propósito de esta investigación es analizar la presencia y la distribución de estos marcadores del discurso en las cartas de los presidentes de las empresas, con el fin de ver cómo se organiza la argumentación en este tipo de discursos y su cohesión textual. Y sobre todo es novedoso ver, como vemos en los resultados, la distribución de estos marcadores en las empresas con ganancias y con pérdidas, de manera que vamos a comprobar si se argumenta igual en una empresa que ha tenido buenos resultados frente a otra que ha tenido unos resultados peores. En cuanto, bueno, esto supongo que lo sabréis porque en este panel hemos hablado ya de marcadores discursivos, pero bueno, son unidades lingüísticas que pertenecen a una macrofunción que se encarga de la cohesión textual a nivel intraoracional y extraoracional, y es una categoría muy heterogénea porque provienen de diferentes categorías gramaticales, en su mayoría adverbios y conjunciones, cuyos límites no están del todo definidos, y esto genera que se hayan propuesto diferentes clasificaciones dependiendo de las perspectivas de los autores, y en nuestro caso hemos adoptado la clasificación en español por antonomasia, que es la de Zorraquino y Portolés del año 99, y que luego es actualizada por Portolés en el año 2011. Pero de la cual hemos eliminado los operadores de formulación y los marcadores conversacionales porque son de dominio oral y no nos interesaba para nuestros textos escritos. Aquí tenemos la clasificación que hemos adaptado, que como vemos hay 4 grandes categorías: estructuradores de la información, conectores, reformuladores y operadores discursivos, con sus correspondientes subtipos. En nuestro caso nos vamos a interesar especialmente por los conectores, como veremos en el análisis, porque sus subtipos nos van a dar resultados bastante interesantes. También cabe decir que nuestros marcadores seleccionados para el análisis, que van a ser solo unos pocos, no encontramos, por ejemplo, en los estructuradores no encontramos ni digresores ni comentadores, o en el caso de los reformuladores solo encontramos uno de reconsideración, porque vamos a tratar marcadores cuya frecuencia normalizada supere el 50 de ocurrencias por millón, como vamos a explicar a continuación. En cuanto al lenguaje financiero, bueno, hemos destacado algunas características que guardan relación con esta investigación. Es un lenguaje especializado cuya función es exhortativa, es decir, pretende argumentar y persuadir, en este caso, a un receptor semi-experto, que son los accionistas de las empresas, en un estilo coloquial, pero dentro de la formalidad, porque son textos escritos, y en un lenguaje muy explicativo. En este sentido, cabría esperar marcadores de reformulaciones de tipo explicativo, pero no hemos encontrado, o al menos no hemos encontrado con una frecuencia elevada. Lo que sí que es importante es tener en cuenta la influencia anglosajona que presentan este tipo de textos, y en nuestro caso se va a ver en el marcador adicionalmente, que vemos que es un calco de inglés de additionally o in addition, y que vamos a comentar en los resultados. Como vemos, bueno, es importante estudiar la argumentación en este tipo de textos, y para ello creemos que los que mejor referían esta argumentación eran los marcadores del discurso. En cuanto a la metodología, nos hemos basado en una lingüística de corpus, que es una metodología empírica en la que se encarga de la recogida de datos lingüísticos en corpus electrónicos, en nuestro caso es el corpus FinTest, y que los procesa mediante herramientas, como en nuestro caso es lineal, en el que pretenden analizar estos elementos, bueno, marcadores del discurso, clasificarlos y tener en cuenta sus frecuencias. Por una parte, la frecuencia absoluta, que es el número de ocurrencias de cada marcador en nuestro corpus, y por otra parte, la frecuencia normalizada, que va a ser especialmente importante porque nos sirve para comparar datos entre corpus de diferentes tamaños. En nuestro caso va a ser, por una parte, nuestro corpus frente al corpus 21, cuyos resultados no podemos explicar aquí, pero se harán en otras investigaciones, y también frente a nuestra subdivisión en el subcorpus de ganancias y pérdidas, que también tienen tamaños diferentes y para los que la frecuencia normalizada va a ser importante. En cuanto al procedimiento para la confección del corpus, bueno, se detalla en ese trabajo de Moreno Sandoval y sus colaboradores. Nosotros hemos elegido unos pasos principales, que era extraer los informes de cada empresa en PDF, que son las empresas de la Bolsa de Madrid, de sus páginas web, pasarlos a texto plano y limpiar los posibles errores producidos en dicha conversión. Luego hemos organizado los textos por empresas, por año, y en nuestro caso luego por pérdidas y ganancias, y los resultados se muestran en ese link que hemos dejado ahí y que tenéis a vuestra disposición. Una vez confeccionado este corpus de informes anuales, no olvidemos que a nosotros nos interesaban las cartas de los presidentes, y por tanto de esos 23 millones de palabras que encontramos en este gran corpus, nosotros solo nos hemos quedado con la parte de las cartas del presidente que confeccionan las primeras páginas de cada informe. Hemos obtenido un corpus de algo más de 300.000 palabras, que también es un corpus considerable. A la vez, este corpus de las cartas del presidente lo hemos subdividido en las empresas que hayan tenido ganancias y las que han tenido pérdidas. Y como podemos comprobar, pues tenemos corpus de muy diferentes tamaños. Las empresas con ganancias contamos con mayor número de textos, gracias a Dios, porque si no España iría un poco mal si tuviéramos muchas empresas con pérdidas, y las empresas con pérdidas cuentan con menor número de textos. Pero para eso necesitamos la frecuencia normalizada, para tratar estos resultados objetivamente. En cuanto al procedimiento para la recogida de los marcadores discursivos, hemos partido del diccionario de partículas del español, que es el DPD que está en línea. Hemos utilizado esta lista porque albergaba un montón de marcadores, y primero hemos comprobado si estaban en nuestro corpus. Los que no estaban han sido descartados. Luego hemos eliminado casos ambiguos. En el caso de falsos positivos, por ejemplo, el marcador hasta nos generaba mucho ruido, no siempre se utilizaba como marcador porque, como hemos dicho, pueden provenir de otras categorías. Y una vez confeccionada esa lista, hemos añadido otros marcadores que no estaban en el DPD, pero que sí que estaban en la clasificación de Portolés, por ejemplo, lo que ha constituido un total de 76 marcadores con diferentes frecuencias. Pero a nosotros, para nuestro análisis, nos interesaba que tuvieran una suficiente frecuencia, que fueran especialmente importantes en el corpus, y por eso hemos establecido, según el tamaño de este corpus, que los marcadores frecuentes superarían la frecuencia normalizada de 50 y los muy frecuentes superarían la de 100. De estos 76 marcadores, hemos elegido los 33 que contaban con frecuencias superiores a 50 y que se mostrarán a continuación. Es importante también decir que bueno, es novedosa esta investigación porque se ha estudiado los marcadores del discurso, por ejemplo, en dominios orales, en los marcadores conversacionales, pero nunca en un dominio financiero y nunca se ha estudiado la argumentación en este sentido. En cuanto a la presencia de los marcadores discursivos en el corpus con respecto al resto de palabras, es verdad que solo ocupan un 0,7%, pero eso también es importante decir que si ocupan tan poco y se encargan de estructurar la argumentación y de organizar la información, es que son verdaderamente engranajes de esta argumentación. Aún así, en nuestro corpus tenemos un 0,7% que es más del doble de lo que encontramos estos marcadores en el Corpus 21, lo que indica también que nuestro texto es un texto argumentativo frente a corpus que tiene otros muchos tipos de texto. Los marcadores que encontramos en nuestro corpus se distribuyen de esta manera. Estoy hablando de los 76 que elegimos en un primer momento. Hay predilección por los conectores y después lo siguen los estructuradores, y esto se explica porque estos tipos de marcadores hacen avanzar temáticamente la argumentación, una progresión temática, frente a los reformuladores o los operadores que quedan rezagados en estos porcentajes. Aquí vemos que el total de los 76 marcadores fueron seleccionados 33, que mostramos en esta lista con su frecuencia absoluta y normalizada, que son los que vamos a analizar en los resultados. De la distribución de estos 33 marcadores vemos que no ha habido grandes cambios con respecto a los 76. Los conectores siguen siendo los más importantes y los más frecuentes, seguido de los estructuradores, y sí que vemos que los reformuladores tan solo son un 2%. Es que en este caso solo hemos encontrado un reformulador de reconsideración con una frecuencia normalizada suficientemente alta, que era en definitiva, y bueno, sus resultados, por tanto, no son fiables, pero sí podemos crear ciertas tendencias para, bueno, en los resultados lo veremos. Vamos a realizar algunas observaciones con respecto a los conectores y a los estructuradores, porque son los más importantes. En los estructuradores de la información vemos aquí dos ejemplos de progresión temática. En primer lugar, vemos una progresión temática lógica de elementos discontinuos por un lado y por otro lado, pero en el segundo ejemplo vemos una progresión temática que se combinan un estructurador de la información con un conector, y esto justifica también la gran presencia de los conectores, que se utilizan para unir elementos, para crear relaciones de causa y consecuencia, pero también vemos que participan en la estructuración del discurso. Aquí vemos la lista de los conectores, son bueno, los más numerosos del corpus y con gran frecuencia, vemos las altas frecuencias que tienen. Nos queríamos centrar en adicionalmente porque es un marcador que tiene una gran frecuencia en nuestro corpus, frente al Corpus 21, por ejemplo, que tan solo tiene una frecuencia normalizada de 11 o 11 y algo, y también es verdad que no lo encontramos en ninguna de las clasificaciones de marcadores del discurso en español, lo cual sí que nos indica que es un marcador discursivo especializado, digamos, de este dominio, por esa influencia anglosajona de la que hemos hablado. En cuanto además, hemos puesto aquí 3 ejemplos de este marcador porque es el conector aditivo más frecuente. Vemos en contraposición con adicionalmente que bueno, supera en mucho esta frecuencia adicionalmente, y vemos que el predilecto en español es además, pero bueno, eso no quiere decir que adicionalmente vaya ganando terreno, y eso lo podemos comprobar en futuras investigaciones o en diferentes tipos de discurso. En cuanto a la distribución de los marcadores discursivos en empresas con ganancias y pérdidas, lo vemos en esta tabla de aquí y ahora comentaremos por tipo de marcador. Esta es la parte más interesante, sobre todo lo veremos en el caso de los conectores. En los estructuradores de la información vemos que se organizan más o menos equitativamente, es decir, tienen la misma presencia unos y otros en las empresas con ganancias y pérdidas. Lo que sí que vemos es una tendencia de estos marcadores en las empresas con pérdidas a iniciar una argumentación lógica en primer lugar, pero luego no seguirla con el segundo lugar, sino con otros elementos como por otra parte o por otro lado. En las empresas con ganancias esta tendencia no es tan considerable, digamos. En cuanto a los conectores, sí que es importante centrarnos en cada tipo. En los aditivos son más frecuentes a las empresas con ganancias, y esto cabría esperar porque estas empresas pretenden hacer avanzar la argumentación, avanzar temáticamente el discurso y presentar los buenos resultados, es decir, pasar de un argumento a otro porque son buenos. En el caso de los consecutivos, vemos que se distribuyen también equitativamente, aunque sí que es verdad que puede haber una tendencia en las empresas con pérdidas de este tipo de marcador, porque marcan una consecuencia de esos malos resultados y en cierta medida intentan eximirse de las culpas. Lo hemos visto en algunos ejemplos. Sí que sería interesante estudiar, por ejemplo, esta diferencia que existe entre, como consecuencia, en las empresas con ganancias frente a las empresas con pérdidas, en las que tenemos el doble de ocurrencias, o en consecuencia, que parece ser muy similar a como consecuencia, pero sin embargo es muy frecuente en las empresas con ganancias respecto a las empresas con pérdidas, que no tenemos ningún ejemplo. En cuanto a los contraargumentativos, por su parte es todo lo contrario a los aditivos, también cabría esperarlo. En las empresas con pérdidas tenemos gran frecuencia de estos marcadores frente a las empresas con ganancias, exceptuando, como vemos aquí, aunque, que es un contraargumentativo débil, por así decirlo, y que sí que es más frecuente en las empresas con ganancias. Esto quiere decir que a pesar de esos buenos resultados, los malos resultados o digamos los malos datos que puedan aportar estas empresas lo intentan subsanar con este marcador, que no es un contraargumentativo fuerte, es decir, no quieren debilitar los buenos argumentos y por eso utilizan aunque. En cuanto a reformuladores, bueno, llevamos adelantando que solo hemos encontrado en definitiva con una frecuencia normalizada tan alta, pero sí que podemos crear una tendencia de que las empresas con pérdidas utilizarán más este tipo de marcadores frente a las de las ganancias porque ralentizan la argumentación, se encargan de recapitular, de reconsiderar, de explicar y digamos que no les interesa tanto a las empresas con pérdidas avanzar en esa argumentación y exponer buenos resultados porque no los tienen. En cuanto a los operadores, tenemos también dos grupos, como hemos visto, los de refuerzo argumentativo y los de concreción. En cuanto a los primeros, destacan en las empresas con ganancias y también cabría esperarlo, no son resultados sorprendentes porque estas empresas pretenden reforzar argumentativamente, es decir, exponer sus resultados, realzarlos frente a las empresas con pérdidas que no les interesa exponer esos resultados, sino todo lo contrario, ocultarlos o incluso, si se exponen, contraargumentar que se van a mejorar en futuros ejercicios. Y en cuanto a los operadores de concreción, pues nos pasa un poco igual que con los reformuladores, porque solo encontramos uno con una frecuencia normalizada tan alta, pero sí que podemos crear una tendencia de que este tipo de marcadores se dará más en las empresas con ganancias porque les interesa mostrar los datos concretamente, mostrar ejemplos, de alguna manera justificar sus argumentos y sus buenos resultados. En cuanto a las conclusiones, brevemente, los marcadores discursivos tan solo son un 0,7% del total de las palabras de nuestro corpus, pero es el doble que en Corpus 21. Esto quiere decir que nuestro texto es más argumentativo y que aún así, aunque son menos del 1%, son elementos realmente imprescindibles para la organización del discurso y para su estructuración. Y también cabe decir que tan solo hemos escogido 33 marcadores que son, digamos, por antonomasia, marcadores que se encuentran en las clasificaciones y que además tienen una frecuencia muy elevada. Queremos decir que realmente va a haber muchísimos más marcadores que nosotros no hemos contemplado y que eso en futuras investigaciones se pueden incorporar a este estudio. Tenemos una gran variedad de ocurrencias, especialmente de los estructuradores de la información y de los conectores, porque hacen progresar y avanzar temáticamente el discurso, que es lo que interesa en una argumentación. Y luego destaca la presencia del conector aditivo adicionalmente como un marcador discursivo, digamos, especializado de este dominio, que no tiene casi aparición en Corpus 21 y que no encontramos en otras clasificaciones de marcadores del español y que es un calco del inglés de additional. Encontramos una alta frecuencia de los conectores aditivos en las empresas con ganancias, como cabría esperar, y de los contraargumentativos en las empresas con pérdidas, que pretenden, digamos, ocultar un poco más los resultados. En cuanto a la reformulación, se crea una tendencia de que va a ser más frecuente en las empresas con pérdidas, que pretenden ralentizar esa argumentación, recapitular, no hacer tanto hincapié en los resultados porque no les interesa. Y las empresas con buenos resultados o con ganancias pretenderán reforzar argumentativamente y utilizar este tipo de marcadores de refuerzo argumentativo para realzar esos buenos resultados. Aquí dejo algunas de las referencias que he utilizado en esta presentación y muchas gracias por vuestra atención. Cualquier pregunta, dejo mi correo y eso ha sido todo.
Pues muchas gracias, Ana. La verdad que muy interesante también tu investigación. Han sido 3 investigaciones de mucho nivel, las que habéis expuesto aquí, pues también como antes, ¿no? Con el panel anterior, y algunas vinculadas temáticamente, ¿no? Como era el caso de Alberto, pero para la parte de inglés, y el de Ana, ¿no? Ahora cabría esperar a hacer uno contrastivo, ¿no? Seguro que hay preguntas para Ana, ¿no? Antes me perdí una para Alberto, que si podemos luego la retomamos. ¿Nadie tiene ninguna pregunta? La formulo yo entonces. Alberto, ¿no tiene ninguna pregunta para Ana?
Claro, las fuentes que ella ha utilizado están más relacionadas, son más del español. Entonces, el corpus me ha parecido interesante. El corpus que has analizado, ¿de dónde has dicho que lo habías extraído? O sea, quiero decir, ¿has creado el corpus o estaba creado y entonces has analizado los datos? ¿Cómo ha sido exactamente el proceso?
Se ha creado para el proyecto FinTest, que es en el que estoy.
De
Entonces,
acuerdo.
no he sido yo la única que ha recopilado este conjunto de textos, pero sí que finalmente cuando se filtraron y se pasaron a texto plano y se limpiaron, estuvo a mi disposición para tratar toda esta información.
¿Y son empresas de un determinado número o sea, de un tamaño determinado? Quiero decir, ¿todas las que se han comparado son equivalentes entre sí o son empresas
El
de,
IBEX, cotizan en bolsa.
Son
todas del
empresa de la Bolsa de Madrid. Sí,
IBEX?
es verdad que algunas empresas tienen informes más reducidos que otras y las cartas igual, pero en su conjunto sí que son más o menos del mismo tamaño.
Equivalentes, se
Sí,
podría decir, ¿no?
equivalentes. Mm.
Vale, gracias.
Sí, Ana además está haciendo ahora una aplicación práctica, que supongo que es todo eso irá a su tesis doctoral, porque todo esto que está estudiando lo que se pretende es precisamente generar una herramienta informática que detecte y etiquete todo ese corpus de manera automática. Por eso ella está
Sí, lo
estudiando.
que estaba diciendo, fueron mis resultados del TFG y a raíz de ahí, bueno, yo me quedé como que quería también analizar más marcadores. A mí me parecieron pocos, era solo una aproximación. Entonces buscamos la manera de eso, de hacer una herramienta que detectara los marcadores para poder clasificarlos masivamente. Digamos que ahora cuando nos hemos puesto con los textos detalladamente y seleccionando los marcadores, nos hemos dado cuenta de que hay una gran cantidad. Es cierto que no con mucha frecuencia muchos de ellos, pero sí que mucha variedad. Hay muchos tipos y muy diferentes y que no están en la clasificación, por ejemplo, de la que yo adopté los marcadores en un principio.
Muy bien. Alberto, había una pregunta. There was a question here for you. Maybe you can answer that. I don't know if you can read it.
What is your own opinion about science popularization? Do you think that science dissemination to non-specialized audiences would make scientific knowledge less valuable? Thank you. Well, I don't think it makes it less valuable. Actually, because science, I mean, if we are talking about science research, we are talking about something that is for society too. I mean, for the improvement of the world we are living and the conditions, well, through a scientific method, right? But in that world, there are also people living. So people are part of the world, and because they are going to get any kind of benefit or prejudice from that scientific research, normally benefits, right? They also should have a word on that. They should say something about that, right? I mean, and if you can, sometimes you can receive a lot of feedback from people or ideas from people who are not specialists that are totally unexpected, but still they can be an idea for you. And also, if they are going to back one project or another, you can see the path they are more interested in, or which fields they are more interested in. And that's also an idea for you to develop, because they are talking about their own necessities and what they are most interested in, right? So it is, I mean, participatory science, it's very valuable for everyone, not just for scientists' research. It should be very snobby, just to have science for scientists and then the rest of people just receiving what you do, right? I think they have also to participate. So it's not less valuable, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much for your clear answer. Bueno, pues yo creo que hemos llegado al final de la sesión, si os parece, ¿no? Ha sido maratoniana hoy para nosotros, los organizadores. Espero que hayáis disfrutado y nos pondremos en contacto con vosotros, por supuesto, con todos los panelistas para ver si queréis publicar los resultados, porque vamos a hacer publicaciones de calidad, no en actas, sino que vamos a hacer una selección cuidadosa de vuestras investigaciones. Bueno, y lo dejamos para mañana. Os invito a asistir mañana. Muchas gracias a todos por participar y a todas. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Chelo, a vosotros.
Gracias, Chelo.
Gracias.
Hasta luego.
Hasta mañana.
Hasta luego.
Adiós.
Adiós.
Adiós.